Hello and welcome to Live Mindfully with Laurie Moore. In today's episode, I am sharing my 4 hacks to manifest a life you love. Let's not waste any more time on this. Let's dive in. Hello, thank you so much for being here. So I have banged on for the last 2 episodes that I am going to get all my work done so I don't have to work these school holidays at all. And guess what? I have not gotten all my work done. So I will be doing some work over these school holidays, but I have cancelled all my classes and I pretty much have everything else under control. So, sometimes the best laid plans fail, and that's okay. That's okay. So today we are talking about 4 hacks to manifest a life you love. And so often we get in our own way when it comes to this. Like if I think of all the times I have been held back, a lot of it has to do with my own mindset and my own inability to see the greatness in me, or my failing to recognize that everything in life is a direct result of a decision I have made. So if I am not loving the direction my life is taking, it is up to me to shift that, because ultimately I am in control. And too often I let the opinions of others of me, or my perception of others' opinions of me, unground me. And when that happens, I don't make confident, happy decisions. I don't trust myself. But I am still the person who is charting the course of my own life. I am still the person who is allowing others' actions and opinions shift my state. I am making the decisions that have led to this moment. And when we hear that, we want to make excuses. That's my initial response anyway. Like I want to say, well, hang on, I had to make that decision because I can't live a life like that because I have kids. And then it's interesting because my immediate response to that in my mind is, okay, but I'm guessing you played some role in choosing to have those kids, right? So having children was obviously something I wanted, and I have attached ideas about the kind of ideal parent I want to be. And if that is in conflict, then only I can investigate that and change it. Either I need to change what my ideals are around parenting, or if my kids are impeding my ability to live the life I want, then I could give them to someone who wants them. I mean, that might sound extreme, but I could hire a nanny, or I could put the kids in before and after school care, which would gift me a lot more time to work. But there's a reason I don't do that. And it's because right now, my values are that I want to be a mother who is around a lot. And that doesn't make me a better or worse person than anybody else and anybody else's decisions. But I can't complain about it because it's a decision I have made for myself. A lot of the time I hear there's not enough hours in a day. And I find that funny. Even when I say it myself, I think, man, you make 100 decisions every day that dictate how your time in that day is spent. Because time is, to me, I view time as an illusion. So if I feel like there are not enough hours in a day, I must also consider how I am using the hours that I have. Because maybe the more accurate statement that I need to make is that I am not utilizing the hours in a day to the best of my ability. And again, we can See how this quickly circles back to us dictating the direction of our lives. And I appreciate that this conversation is a little in our faces and perhaps not really what we want to hear, because it requires us now to review our choices. And man, it's just so much easier to complain sometimes, right? You know, the best example I have for this is how we manage exercise. We make, I think, excuses for exercise or lack thereof than any other choice we make. But the truth is, if you are not moving your body, it's not because you don't have time. It's because you simply don't value exercise as much as you value relaxing and watching TV or any other extracurricular activity. It's got nothing to do with time or limitations. It's got nothing to do with anything other than our choice to prioritize something or not. We don't have to spend money on exercise anymore. You don't have to run or go to a gym or go to a yoga class. The parks around my house have these awesome exercise equipment for free. And there's tons of exercise that we can do that it doesn't cost us anything. So the biggest excuse that we have is time, but it's not really true. We have the ultimate control over how we live our lives. And I'm not saying that is necessarily easy, but when we can accept that we are creating our destinies, we open ourselves up to being okay with the choices we have made thus far. And I think we gift ourselves the opportunity to alter our choices in the future, especially if our current choices are no longer meeting us where we want to be. There is so much power in that. And it is, of course, my first hack. Recognize and accept that the decisions you make are dictating the course of your life. You are the master of your fate. You are the captain of your soul. So if you are not happy, you have the power to change that. And it might be helpful for you to also consider what driving forces have led you to making decisions that are not meeting your needs. So we all have 6 human needs, 4 that are primal and 2 that are spiritual. And we will meet those 6 needs either positively, negatively, or neutrally. These needs have to be met one way or another. They have to be met. So the 4 primal are certainty, variety, significance, and connection. And the 2 spiritual needs are growth and contribution. And I want to use an example here to further dissect what I mean by meeting our needs positively, negatively, or neutrally. So one of the basic human needs is connection. So we might call a friend to share something exciting that is happening in our life. Or we might call a friend to talk about some of the negative things that are happening in our life. Or we might call a friend and ask them what is happening in their life. Positive, negative, neutral. Either way, the act of calling the friend is meeting the need of connection. Now, the outcome of the act may not feel good, but the decision that we made was to call the friend. So let's say you only ever talk about the wonderful things that are happening in your life, or that you only talk about the negative things that are happening, or maybe you just don't talk about yourself that much at all. Over time, while this need of connection is still being met, it may not continue to feel good for you both. And over time, you may notice that the friendship just doesn't feel like a good friendship anymore. Toxic positivity is just as detrimental to a relationship as toxic negativity. And in order for connection to be healthy and to remain healthy, it needs to be a give and take. That's what connection is. Connection is, I see you and you see me. So what we have to remember is there is always a way to fulfill a need. What you need to consider is whether the outcome is resulting in pleasure or in pain. And it really is that simple. We are going to meet each of these needs positively, negatively, or neutrally. And how we meet the need is going to fall on the spectrum of pleasure at one end and pain at the other. And we, of course, want to make decisions that result in more pleasure than pain long term. But just as I mentioned in last week's podcast, we also don't want to be so tied up to the result of our actions that the result is what sways the experience for us. So if we operate with right action, the result shouldn't matter. So my second hack is getting really clear on the direction of your life for the next 1 to 5 years. To me, there is really no point planning further than that because so much can change internally and externally in that time. So what direction do you want your life to take over the course of the next year? And most importantly, are you willing to do what you have to do to get there? So at this point in the podcast, I just want us to all, if you have the opportunity, to close our eyes down or just soften the gaze and take a deep breath in. And sigh it out. So just taking a moment to think about the direction you want your life to take over the course of the next year. And are you willing to do what you have to do to get there? Because you are not going to achieve this goal, this desire, this way of living without having to put in the same effort that everybody else had to put in to achieving the same thing. And a lot of this decision making is going to come down to understanding which human need you are trying to fulfill. And it might be important for me now in this conversation to let you know that we tend to value 2 of the human needs more than the rest. But there's no point in doing this exercise without taking into consideration whether or not you're willing to do what you have to do to get the life that you want. So in doing this exercise of seeing which human need your future goals are trying to meet is going to require you to be really honest with yourself and to remember that whatever your values are, it doesn't make you a good person or a bad person. It is what it is. So within these 4 primal needs, certainty, variety, connection, and significance, exists 2 paradoxes, which is interesting because I think that the paradoxes we see exist in society, that we feel exist in society, may very well exist because of the paradoxes that exist within these primal needs. So the paradoxes that exist among the primal needs are you can't live a life of certainty and still have a lot of variety. They're at opposite ends of the spectrum. Someone who lives a life of certainty, absolute certainty, stays at the same job, they don't like change, they don't enjoy surprises, they don't like not knowing how things work. Whereas someone who values variety thrives on change. They're constantly trying new things and visiting new places and pushing their boundaries. And there's also a paradox between connection and significance. If you really value significance, you need the people in your life to make you feel special. You want recognition for the things that you are doing. Often you crave a need to be seen as good. And you need this a lot more than someone who values connection. In fact, if you have an unhealthy need for significance, you are going to find it hard to connect with someone because you view them as competition and you're always comparing yourself with other people. If you value connection, Your focus is on love and building relationship for the purpose of connecting socially, emotionally, spiritually, or professionally with someone or something. Connection brings about feelings of closeness and belongingness. Someone who values significance places a higher value on achievement than someone who values connection. Someone who values connection places a higher value on belonging and creating friendship. But both have positive, negative, and neutral traits, and positive and negative and neutral ways of meeting those needs. And I have included 2 resources in the show notes that further explain these human needs. And they're actually really interesting reads if you want to learn more about the human needs. So when I completed this exercise, I realized that my drivers are certainty and significance. And that helps me understand myself more and be more compassionate to the fact that when change comes, I will find that harder than someone who thrives on variety. That when I fail something, that will hurt my ego. I like to achieve things. I'm a goal setter. I place a lot of value on significance and my significance in the world, the legacy that I am leaving, the person that I am. When relationships in my life wane or they die out, it doesn't really impact me in the same way. I often very quickly decide, okay, well, it just didn't work out and that's okay. I can really be cut and dry with friendships sometimes. And if a boundary with me has been crossed too many times, it's really easy for me to walk away. I don't find that difficult to do. Whereas I have friends who really value connection, and they value connection so much that when a relationship for them is suffering, they suffer tremendously too. And this is what I meant when I said before that one person is not better or worse than another. We are who we are. And no matter where you land on your 2 primary primal needs, you're a good person. All we can really do is learn as much about ourselves as possible and then play to our strengths and be incredibly loving and kind toward ourselves for the things that challenge us, and be respectful that what isn't an issue for us might be a challenge for others, and vice versa. And then we need to build more awareness around the positive, negative, and neutral actions we take each day to meet our top 2 primal needs, and become aware of how that is impacting our life and driving its direction. And one thing that impacts us all, whether we like to admit this or not, is fear. Research says that we operate from fear-based decision-making far more than we operate from rational-based decision-making. And again, I have a link in the show notes. And this ties into my 3rd hack. Push past the fear. In all of your dreams or goals that you want to manifest, it's helpful to consider what the absolute worst case scenario or scenarios are, because we're going to do this anyway. Let's say your ultimate goal is to climb the career ladder at work and you're feeling so much pressure because this requires you to upskill, but you're a parent. So off the bat, you might start experiencing guilt. You might be questioning how you are going to manage all of this. You'll be dealing with a lot more decisions, and you'll have to prioritize between work and family. So your stress levels are going to be higher, and potentially you may receive judgment from others about your choices. You also need to accept that you are going to miss important milestones for your family and friends. Perhaps your biggest fear is feeling like you are not going to do any of it well, and you may question whether it's going to be worth it long term. How does this look in real life for you? And all of those fears, they start to compound and tell you, you can't achieve this. It's too much. It's too hard. Maybe you're on the other end of the spectrum and you want to be a stay-at-home parent, but you're feeling so much pressure to return to the workplace. Your biggest fear is a rejection, knowing that this choice will stagnate your career. And maybe this will lead to you feeling like you are not a good enough contributor in your home and in society. Ultimately, being a stay-at-home parent equates to you not being good enough. And here we are, again, at the foot of the big fear mountain. And instead of climbing it, just like our person who wants to progress their career, fear begins to compound us. Push past the fear by considering what the most amazing, incredible benefits of this choice are going to mean for you. If you're progressing your career, that most certainly is going to lead to less financial stress and a better standard of living. You will have higher job satisfaction, recognition, and achievement at work. Maybe you can travel more and have nicer things. And let's not forget how important our work is to belonging and feeling useful. If you're choosing to be a stay-at-home parent, that most certainly is going to lead to you having more fulfilling and loving relationships with your kids. You're not going to miss important milestones. You're going to be there for everyone. You're going to save on childcare. You'll have freedom from job-related stress and gratification and joy that comes from being a full-time parent. It's so important to know what the fear triggers are, because these are going to be the blocks that prevent you from ultimately manifesting the life you love. And these excuses that you make, these are going to be the things that lead you to reduced actions, but not reduced expectations and not reduced desire. And when you're not doing the things you have to do to achieve the life you actually want to live, you're going to end up in the same place with the same results and feeling this same way. But if you shift your focus to the benefits, you can craft a much better idea of why you want your goal. And suddenly, the fear doesn't exist as much. My final hack: look for people who have the results you want, find out what they are doing, and do the same thing. If you have someone you can model your behavior on and someone who has traversed the beaten path, this will help you to get there quicker. And you don't need to take every one of their steps, but it will certainly be helpful for you to understand what it takes to live this life that you desire. And if you aren't willing to put in that same amount of energy, that same amount of time and effort, then you know this isn't actually the life you want. And that's okay too. This episode isn't about living the biggest, richest, most important life you can. This episode is about manifesting, bringing to fruition a life that you love. So let's recap. First, you need to understand that you are in charge of your decisions. You are creating your life. This is empowering. Second, those choices you are making are being dictated and driven by our 6 human needs. 2 of them are a particularly big driving force in your life. Work out which ones they are. Third, fear is going to hold each of us back. It is the number one driver to not living the life you want. So let's be clear on what the fears actually are, and then let's flip fear on its head and get very clear on what the biggest benefits are of living this life you desire. Use the benefits to project you past the fear. And lastly, find people who have achieved what you want to achieve and model your behavior on theirs. And if it's a possibility, get in front of these people. Actually meet them, have a cup of joe with them. That'll be a huge benefit for you. To all the parents out there, happy first week of the winter school holidays here in Australia. I hope you are not just surviving, but thriving. And hopefully you also have a little time off to enjoy your little people. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please hit that subscribe button and share this episode with family, friends, and across your social media profiles. I would be so grateful. Thank you so much for listening. This is Live Mindfully with Laurie Moore. I'll be back again next week. Until then, take good care of yourself.